Hello, everyone tuning in, and welcome to Community Table Talk. Today, we are going to be exploring a segment about the relationship between neighborhoods and housing. I am very excited to introduce our guest today. Our first guest is Joanne McComb with Kinbridge Community Association, and she is joined by emilyj Jaarsma with Greenway Chaplin Community Center. So thank you both, Joanne and Emily, for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Excited to be here.
As always, before we begin, I'd like to offer a land acknowledgement. I'd like to begin by saying that the land on which I host this from today, so Kitchener-Waterloo area, which is also the Haldeman Tract, is the land traditionally used by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. I also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. So let's dive right into it. So something that housing providers can occasionally overlook or become disconnected from is the importance of neighborhoods in the community in which their housing is located. So I'm hoping we can just have a conversation and touch on why it's important to have that neighborhood feel in our community.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and start, Emily, if you don't mind. Yeah, it's important for everybody to feel a part of their community and connected and wanted, and that they have a purpose within their neighborhood. And the neighborhood is more than just a building, and it's more than just a block or a small space. There's to be a vibrant, healthy neighborhood. It's really important that everybody connects and engages with each other.
I think we're excited. Greenway is in one of the townhouse units in Cambridge, Ontario, and we're excited to be in the neighborhood so we get to know the tenants that are also in the townhouse units next door to us. And I think it's exciting to share our spaces both on site and then meet our neighbors, whether it's in city parks or at community centers up the street. It's amazing to invite new tenants when they move into housing in our street in particular, or other housing units in our area, and just make that initial welcome and the connection and letting tenants know that we're here.
Yeah. And the other great part about it is we get to do our work where people are. So we meet them on their day-to-day journeys or what's happening. We get to hear the excitement. We're into the housing pieces as well, units. And just really quickly, it's such a joy when where we're located and where the school bus stops. So the kids come off the bus, we get to hear right off the top, about their story, about their day. We give them a snack when they come in as well. So we just get to have the joy of the day-to-day stuff that happens as well, which is really important, I think, even when you live in a neighborhood, to feel noticed and wanted and welcomed. Yeah.
And I think too, an unintended positive outcome, especially for housing providers, is that when you have a housing unit that is settled comfortably in the neighborhood, or if you have a strong sense of community in your neighborhood, you are going to see less tenant conflict. You're going to have less issues. People, the overall quality of life is going to be better. So I think it really speaks to the importance, not only from a tenant and organization perspective, but also a housing provider perspective. It really benefits everyone when you start developing those relationships.
Yes.
So in your circumstances, how do your organizations and community centers interact with housing?
Yeah. I guess in a variety of ways. I mean, one of the just practical ways is because Greenway is located in, or is a tenant also, we know how the maintenance requests get done, and that seems like a small thing, but that's sometimes even helpful for our neighbors next to us to help the tenant get the toilet fixed, or get the back door fixed, or those different pieces is kind of a necessary piece. And I think a good connection to sort of understand how that system is, especially if we have a neighbor that's kind of struggling with that, or if they're new tenants in the area. That's one example. What else, Joanne?
Yeah, and I think another really great way is we can be that welcoming neighbor, that you have that welcome wagon kind of approach, where when we know a unit is empty, we can watch for when a new tenant comes, and we can be there to say, hi, welcome, here we are, and here's what's available for you and your children, or just right within the neighborhood. So it's connecting them right from the very beginning.
I think we've also invited some of the tenant supervisors at the different housing units to some of our community events, which helps our current tenants or other neighbors looking at housing options in our neighborhoods to come out and explore what might be here, why you might move to Cambridge in particular, and learn more about their neighborhood association or their community center. Yeah.
And sometimes what's really good is at being a neighborhood association, we're about providing resources and bringing people together and building that capacity. So when there's an issue, sometimes we hear what that issue is, we see what the real issue is going on, and we can connect with housing then and say, hey, can we work together? Rather than this having to go to any kind of a further down the road or take a long time to try and resolve, that we can find ways that everybody is happy and feels like there's been a solution and they've been a part of it. That's one of the things I really enjoy, is when we all come together and brainstorm.
Yeah, and I think another benefit here is, for tenants or members of co-ops who maybe feel like there is a power imbalance between a housing provider and a tenant, because there's an inherent power indifference there.
Yeah.
Sometimes folks aren't comfortable coming to their housing provider and saying, hey, I have a problem with this, or hey, I don't remember how to do a maintenance request.
Yeah.
I know that that's been a barrier for folks, and having these connections with neighborhood associations or other community agencies in the area can really bridge that gap. And like you were saying, Joanne, it not only prevents things like eviction down the road, but property damage and interpersonal conflict. And there's a lot of life skills and just, socialization skills that can be built through those relationships.
And I think one of the beauties, just really quickly, is when you have newcomers coming as well, is it's a really neat opportunity to both for the newcomers to learn about their new home, but also for us to learn about them as well. And we can do it in so many different celebratory ways and really bring that out so they're not isolated.
And I think even if housing providers have questions about what services we have and programs on site, whether it's for your 6-year-old to learn cooking or your 18-year-old to get their first job, the neighborhood associations have a variety of options for that. And then if we don't have it, then we'll make sure that you can get connected with that next community referral. And we're here to walk alongside that tenant or the housing provider. So call us.
And I think that's great too, because when you are a housing provider who oversees many sites, if you are, maybe a for-profit housing provider who manages 5, 6, 7 buildings, if you are someone like Waterloo Region Housing who oversees, multiple buildings across the Tri-Cities, you don't always have that capacity in order to welcome newcomers or be able to do those referrals, maybe the way someone from that neighborhood organizations could.
Yeah, I think we're bound by different kind of time frames.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, even as neighborhoods, we have formal reporting to do as well. But during the day, we can have more of that neighborly kind of feel and slow down a little bit and just sit with neighbors.
I think connecting neighbors as folks are moving around our region, for example. So if their first housing is in Cambridge, but they're moving to Kitchener, helping those tenants and even the tenant, primarily the tenants, making sure they're feeling home into their whatever their next community is a place where we also provide support.
I'm hoping just to quickly touch on what a neighborhood association actually entails. Because I imagine there are some housing providers listening to this and going, that's great. How do I get to be a part of this?
So we have in Cambridge itself, we have 8 neighborhood organizations that are staffed, and we have one that is unstaffed. And those of us who are able to have that partnership with the region and be housed right within other tenants as well is great. And we're all ages, so from 0 to seniors, and we're education, recreation, social service programs. And what we do is it's a community development approach where community is part of brainstorming or bringing the ideas or issues forward, and we sit and we do together the solutions. So we meet the needs and meet people where they are at in their day and in their understanding of whatever their needs might be or what they know. So we all have websites. We can be connected through our websites. As you know, we have our facilities right within the housing. So some of the housing folks will also know that we're on their list as a tenant as well. Hopefully, we're all good tenants as well. And then, yeah, so that's how they can get engaged in how we do that work together, or who do we talk to? Because we have number of staff who have the different sets of skills and gifts that they bring as well, who would be more appropriate to do some of the conversations and connecting with.
And I guess because we're recording this in June of 2021, anyway, we're looking ahead and right now working on our summer camp programs, which are pretty big in Cambridge across our sites. So that's a day program with some of us have after and before care, and that's just another opportunity, I guess, close by and in your neighborhoods. And because of the 8 neighborhood associations, we are connected. If you call one of us and you're not sure, like, we'll make sure you get connected, or if the tenants are moving to Hespeler versus Preston, we'll make sure that you get connected with the resources that you need. I think just to also highlight focusing on youth, volunteer opportunities, some training, getting ready for work, finding the first job. Those are things that we try to connect, especially with the youth in our neighborhoods, providing those opportunities and giving them those first couple of steps. And I think community events is the other place, like Joanne was saying, to celebrate together, to get together, and to get to know your neighbors. So it's another good way if housing operators want to come, and please come and join in our events, come and say hi, bring your information, connect with your tenants. It would be great to have you there.
And another thing is the neighborhoods are nimble. So we do what we call organic programming, and yes, gardening too. We do have gardens that we do that as well with. But what that means is what are the issues that are coming up within our housing complexes, and what might be a need, and that's where we come together and brainstorm of who are our connections, what do we think might be something else, like maybe if there's children that have been doing some of that damage, or adults even, like what's going on here, let's help understand who are the partners we need to talk to, and what can we put in place that's a positive piece and a redirection of that energy. So that would be an organic process of programming.
Yeah, the nice thing is it focuses a lot more on that restorative justice piece rather than the landlords having to come in and doing that punitive piece.
Yeah, and as much upstream kind of programming that we can do.
Yeah, it does mitigate a lot of the future risks and issues when we can have people on the ground looking and seeing, like, oh, youth are bored, and that's where we're seeing a lot of property damage from. How can we navigate and rotate our services to fit that need that's come up? So just through our conversations, are there other services or supports that these agencies provide, maybe that we haven't touched on yet? I know we've touched on a few.
We have our Youth Force program, which is in partnership with the region of Waterloo, actually, and that's providing employment for youth who live in and around housing, regional housing. So they're youth that are often farthest from opportunities for employment that other youth may have. So they might not have the connections. They might actually be, some of the caretakers for their families, and they don't have some of those outlets that they can do. So what this does is it's a program where they go through their training and orientation and application, the whole bit. And then they're resourced with equipment. So there might be safety boots, depending on what the work is that we're doing. And then every Friday is a skills training day. So they get to have, some life skills. There's some financial skills. There's that job resume building piece. And the beauty of that part of it is that the whole neighborhood can come around it. So if there's someone, that we know that is an Emily, say one of Emily's area, that we say, what, we really want to hire this young fellow and he's on our team over in our area. What kind of resources can we do to support him? And we can be there, and the families are there as well, and they get to have that pride of, oh, that's my son, my daughter who's working in the complex here, and look what they're doing. So it flips even. There's more of those little filaments that reach out on doing those. Then our youth also that now have something on their resume, and then they have the full year connection. So it's not just a summer job, you know, at another place where it is just a summer job and then you're done with it. It's you've made that connection and we continue connecting. And because it's region wide, they're also connected to a bigger family of networks then.
I think one of the other pieces we're working on is a newcomer engagement program. So there are 2 new staff at Kinbridge at Joanne's site, and one staff is focused on youth newcomers. So between the ages of 14 to 25, looking at programming, connecting and welcoming specifically in the city of Cambridge newcomers. And then we have another staff person focusing on seniors, and both of those staff are connecting with newcomers who have come to Cambridge, brainstorming program ideas. It's been a lot of virtual program in the last 6 months, but we're super excited about doing some in-person over the summer and continuing to grow that program. There will be a newcomer conference coming up in August or September. So again, another way for tenants or housing providers to come out and learn a little bit more specifically about that program, and seeing if there's other supports that we can connect to them and to our newcomers in the neighborhoods.
And all the neighborhoods do run summer camps. And one of the great things that we've been able to do this year is we're partnered with a funder, Cowan, and also Conestoga College, and they're providing training for STEAM facilitators, as well as the equipment that's going to be needing it. And each of the neighborhoods get 2 STEAM facilitators throughout the summer for their camps. So it's an opportunity of exploring things that may not otherwise be able to, and that's going to be afforded to a lot of the kids that are within the housing.
And then if we have neighbors or tenants that are looking for services, counseling services or access to basic needs, then we'll connect neighbors with the family outreach program, because through House of Friendship, and we have family outreach workers in our sites. We also have access to counseling, and that would be free counseling, again, at our sites, and kind of reducing those barriers to transportation to individuals so that they can access counseling. Those are the other 2 services.
Yeah, family and children services we have facilitated partnerships with. So we have programming that we come in and we do, and we offer that one as well. So it's giving coping skills. It's also giving resiliency skills that children are learning, as well as families. So yeah, some neat partnership reaches that we have to bring programs into a smaller scale as well as a large scale.
And then our programs throughout the rest of the year, so fall, winter, and spring, most of the neighborhood associations run recreation programs. It might be on a drop-in basis. It may be on a 6-week cycle. And some of those, might be cooking. Some of them are sport related. Some of them are learning new skills in different capacities. Because it's ever changing, check out our websites, call one of us, and we have different opportunities coming up all the time. And we're really curious too, to see what our neighbors and tenants are interested in. And that kind of impacts our programming and what's coming up.
So I think for some folks listening who maybe don't have experience working with neighborhood associations, this is a lot of really wonderful information, and it can seem really complicated, right? So I think some people might be wondering, why don't we use a siloed approach? Why doesn't Greenway Chaplin just take this area? Why doesn't Kinbridge just take this area? So I'm wondering if you could explain maybe why neighborhood associations have maybe more success or have that more community feel versus like siloed areas.
So what we do, we actually do have a boundary catchment area, it's called, within the city of Cambridge that we're primarily responsible for. But one of the things that we've learned is people don't live in boundaries. That's part of it. Grass is always greener on the other side as well. So like when tenants are wanting to transfer, to one of the other areas. So by having our own boundaries that we work within, that allows us to really get a deep understanding of that part of the city. The other thing is being connected, the neighborhoods being connected together as a network, is each person in each ED of their neighborhood gets a deeper understanding of their neighborhood. Then what we can do is there's always a soft approach of people moving, like Emily did allude to it earlier. If someone was going to move from, her area from Greenway up over to Hespeler, they can help them explore that piece, and they can connect them to people when they get there, so that transition is easier. Or it might be, the same issues are going on there. I guess I might as well just learn how to do some problem solving and make this my home and and be positive with the relationships that I'm making. So yeah, that's part of it. So the siloed piece is then what happens is you're doing to community as opposed to with community and for community. Mhm.
And I think, again, we're trying to make an experience for the neighbors that is sort of best kind of where they're at and what they're interested in, what they're willing to learn and to be participating in. And sometimes maybe if I have a cooking program this term, then, Joanne might offer the cooking program next
Mhm.
term. So individuals are able to move around, especially the
Mhm.
city. And for example, children might be going to a grandparent or a different caregiver through the day. So they may be able to access services in Preston during the day with their grandma, but they might then do a Saturday program with dad in the Kinbridge
Yep.
area. So having some of those connections, I think, offers neighbors the variety that they might be interested
Mhm.
in. And then we're just flexible and connected, I guess, to make sure that the neighbors getting what they need.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you have that warm transfer of care, it makes all the
Mhm.
difference, right?
Mhm.
Especially for folks who may have had some traumatic
Yeah.
experiences, or maybe are struggling to retell their story over and over to get the services that
Yeah.
they need. When you have these associations, that story really
Yeah.
only needs to be told once, and you're
Mhm.
connected to the appropriate services and getting the care.
Mhm.
And it doesn't feel like you're getting a service.
Yeah,
It
Mhm.
feels like you're just living your day and being part of the community. Mhm.
absolutely, absolutely. So as we're talking about that community of care and walking alongside people, I'm curious if you could explain what some of the best practices that you use to do this are.
Do you want to
I
start
mean,
with that one, Emily?
sure. I guess for our recreation programs, all of our staff have a variety of training, and many of the associations are working under the High Five principles, which is a Parks and Rec Ontario standard. Actually, that's nationally recognized. So there's some training piece and there's some policies and procedures, and that kind of framework helps us to plan and create an awesome experience for the participants. It's about a caring adult. It's about finding a new friend. It's about practicing the skills in that program. So in a recreation sense, that's kind of one of the best practices
Mhm.
we use there.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. And then we have joint funding where we have consistent training throughout the neighborhoods. So we're able to do those types of things. And when we say best practice, so one of the things that we do is with our staff, because sometimes our staff are actually residents in the neighborhood and they've gone to our camps and they have, then they've been a leader in training and then volunteer, all those pieces. And then all of a sudden now they're employed with us. So there's that piece that the number of I know for us youth that have come from living within the regional housing and
mhm.
have now accessed university and those parts and are now coming back on a full-time basis. It's pretty exciting when you do that work. So when we have joint training across the neighborhoods, what the best practices are is not static necessarily because there's new information coming all the time. So that allows us to be relevant to what the issues are as well within the neighborhood. All staff, have their first aid. So we're also building the skill sets of our community as well. So volunteers have certain trainings that we provide with them, which can be added to their resume. So there's food skill training, right? And there is the volunteer training, all of those parts and pieces. And now with all of the issues coming in, with our indigenous communities, Islamophobia, Black Lives Matter, it helps us to have at the neighborhood level. So best practice, you have conversations, it's education. It's about, understanding before we start blaming or before we start criticizing. So we can build those pieces in there and have that along the way. So it really is, it's not, it's not a to-do thing. It's about what's the issues going on today and what do we need to do. So the best practice is almost letting community lead what the issue is, and we're putting the framework around it of how to tackle it with them. So
And I
community
think
development, yeah.
I
That's what
think
I was
that's
going to say. Our asset-based community development, that whole ABCD framework, and working with
Yeah.
the neighbors and building that capacity. And it's an interesting conversation, I think, that the neighborhoods have been having about what does it mean to build
Yeah.
neighborhoods? What does it mean to build community? How do we
Yeah.
do this through our physical
Yeah.
spaces, and looking at how can we do, public art and all these other different ideas to create different
Mhm.
pieces in the neighborhood.
And we do follow the 12 determinants of health as well. And we are all part of the regional, community fit for children. We sit at regional tables as well. So we get the big full picture that's going on, and what are some of the resources, and what's going on in the region that we might want to tap into.
Mhm, mhm.
I'm so glad that you brought up the ABCD, the asset-based community development as well, because even for housing providers who might be watching that maybe don't have an opportunity to connect closely with neighborhood associations, especially folks that are, kind of out on the outside of city lines and such, that's so important to look into. If you're looking from a community engagement, community development lens, leverage what you already have. And I think that's something that your neighborhood associations do so well, is look inward into the community. Folks come with a variety of experiences, which means they also come with a variety of skills. You have it right in front of you. So,
Yeah.
Listening to your tenants or co-op members and hearing, what their needs are in the moment, but also how are they already addressing it?
Yeah.
Can we just build on that?
Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. I think the neighborhoods too, maybe in a different context, we're willing to bring our staff to other locations for other tenants in our catchment area. So I may be located in a regional Waterloo housing unit, but I may connect with, or I do connect with the co-op in my kind of catchment focus area to work with the staff there, the tenants there, and just like see how we can support their growth in that neighborhood.
Yeah, and we have two different locations within housing, and we have people who live in one and work in the other, and they get to see right what the other's doing, and they bring the ideas back and forth when they're not on work time.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for them, that's not a job. For them, this is their community. This is their life. And for some of us, we can leave work and go about our business and not have to connect with anyone else, but that's not the case for a lot of folks. And that's a good thing in a lot of the senses that, when you have a personal vested interest in what's going on around you, you really get people bringing out those creative ideas. Again, with that ABCD model.
Yeah.
So, Emily, Joanne, I see that our time together is winding down. So as we're coming to the finish here, is there anything else that you feel is important for people to know that we haven't covered yet?
I think it might be opportunities where we can share from neighborhoods with folks at housing of who we are and what we do with each other, and understanding each of our day-to-day experiences within housing and our time frames that we have within it, and how we can maybe do some intentional planning together.
I guess I'd also like to invite housing providers. The Cambridge mobilization team is one of the networks that the neighborhoods are connected to. We meet on a monthly basis on the third Thursday of the month, and it's an opportunity to connect with other housing providers we do have on that call, plus school boards and other community organizations. So come and learn about neighborhood associations, but then other nonprofits that are working either in Cambridge or across the region.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for joining us today. I feel like for our folks in Cambridge and maybe broader in the region, this will hopefully inspire some research about neighborhood associations and how they can become involved. So thank you again for sharing your knowledge and experience with us.
Oh, thank you for the time.
Come and visit. We look forward to seeing you.
Yes.